Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, I'm Peppo. With 2024 wrapping up, we are getting closer and closer to the Monster Hunter Wilds release at the end of February 2025. So today I'll be breaking down the most important new and returning longsword moves we have seen in the Monster Hunter Wilds beta, analyzing the changes and as always sharing useful data and giving you my thoughts on it. In Ward Iceborne, the longsword's highest damage attack was the Helm Breaker, accessed via Spirit Trust. This core mechanic remains in Wilds, however Helm Breaker isn't the top damage dealer anymore. That title now belongs to the Spirit Release Lash. In this video I'll fully break down these three moves to understand exactly how they work. Let's start with the Spirit Trust. Its motion value has been nerfed from 26 to 18, but it now grants hyper armor at the start of the animation and is faster to execute. In Iceborne you had a speed multiplier on the Spirit Trust after a Iceborne Slash in Red Gauge. This multiplier is gone in Wilds. Also in Iceborne, Spirit Trust always regenerates 10% of your Spirit Gauge, while in Wilds it either consumes 10% or regenerates 10% if you have less than 10% Spirit. This change seems odd since you will almost always want to use the Helm Breaker in Red Gauge, as we will see, meaning you won't consume or regenerate any Spirit anyway. Hit lag has been reduced, making it feel smoother. Sharpness consumption has also been halved, from 2 points in Iceborne to just 1 in Wilds. Probably the biggest change is the removal of the limited angle for Spirit Trust. In Iceborne you had roughly 90 degrees of freedom to aim the thrust after an attack. In Wilds, thanks to Focus Mode, you have full 360 degrees freedom. If you didn't use Focus Mode in the beta, definitely try it at release, it's a game changer and not just for longsword. After a Spirit Trust, you jump upwards to perform a Spirit Helm Breaker. Unlike Iceborne, in Wilds you can choose whether or not to perform it. Pressing triangle, R2 or even doing nothing will execute a Helm Breaker, dropping 1 Spirit Gauge level, just like in Iceborne. Pressing square will sheath your weapon and keep your current Spirit Gauge level. The Helm Breaker's motion value in Red Gauge has been nerfed from 25 to 23 per hit. Remember, it can hit up to 7 times, like in Iceborne. Yellow Gauge Helm Breaker has been buffed from 15 to 20, and White from 10 to 15. However, using Helm Breaker outside of Red Gauge is generally bad in Wilds because you lose the ability to follow up with Spirit Release Lash. This is why you will almost always want to use Helm Breaker in Red Gauge. Also, like in Iceborne, Helm Breaker doesn't consume sharpness. As you might recall, Helm Breaker in Iceborne had negative elemental multipliers, 0.3 per hit. In Wilds it's even worse, 0.2 per hit. Someone needs to explain why the developers seems to dislike elemental longswords so much. I enjoy using different elemental longswords, but with such low elemental multipliers on the highest damage attacks, it discourages elemental builds and risks a return to a raw damage meta. In Wilds, Helm Breaker no longer fills your Spirit Gauge gradually over time. In the November beta, you received no Spirit after landing a Helm Breaker, leaving you with 0. However, this seems to have changed based on recent previews from the Osaka build in early December. Helm Breaker now grants some Spirit on a hit. This is crucial because it allows us to use Force Slash after Helm Breaker, like in Iceborne, which wouldn't be possible with no Spirit. You can also Special Sheath after a Helm Breaker, just like in Iceborne. Finally, pressing R2 again performs the Helm Breaker follow-up, Spirit Release Lash, but only after a Red Gauge Helm Breaker. Aside from this, your options after a Helm Breaker are limited, similar to Iceborne. I'd love to see more combo options, like continuing with a Thrust or Phase Slash. Hopefully they will add more chaining possibilities in the final version. Finally, they have improved maneuverability in mid-air before the Helm Breaker, allowing for a wider angle of movement. With Focus Mode you can even move backwards. As I said, Focus Mode is a game changer. Oh, and another small but welcome change. If your Spirit Gauge is about to expire after connecting a Spirit Trust but you are still in mid-air, it won't expire until you execute the Helm Breaker, preventing accidental Yellow Gauge Helm Breakers. Overall, the animation speed for the Spirit Trust plus Helm Breaker combo is faster in Wilds, likely due to the new follow-up attack, Spirit Release Lash. This is the longsword's strongest attack, accessible only by pressing R2 after a Red Gauge Helm Breaker. This is why using Helm Breaker in yellow or white gauge makes little sense. Spirit Release Lash, like Helm Breaker, drops your Spirit Gauge by 1 level. This move hits up to 12 times, divided into 4 groups, each with its own motion value. There are 2 initial hits that function as markers at the start of the animation, with a motion value of 5 each. Landing both makes it highly likely you will connect all 12 delayed hits, even if the monster moves. The 12 delayed hits are grouped with motion values of 10, 16, 22 and 36. The total motion value of Spirit Release Lash is 262. In comparison, Spirit Thrust plus Helm Breaker has a total of 179. This means that the entire combo from Spirit Thrust to Spirit Release Lash has a total motion value of 441, making it the highest damage combo in the longsword arsenal, by far, especially considering it consumes less than 2 points of sharpness. Don't forget that even with Spirit Release Lash you can make use of the focus mode to adjust the direction of your attack. It will help significantly aiming at the target. And again, like Helmbreaker, it has negative elemental multipliers, 0.1 this time, incredibly low. This suggests that Elemental Longsword will not benefit much from this attack, favoring raw damage builds. It's really a shame that they keep applying such low elemental multipliers to these high damage moves. Part break multipliers, however, are more interesting, 1.50 for the first 3 groups and 3.0 for the last. This high part break multiplier will make it easier to flinch monsters and break parts with Spirit Release Lash. Each hit restores 10% of spirit, fully refilling the gauge if all hits connect. Remember, you can delay this attack to time it for when the monster is closer. After the execution, you are forced to sheath, leaving you vulnerable, but thankfully Spirit Release Lash grants Hyper Armor for the entire animation to tank incoming attacks. While Hyper Armor makes sense for Spirit Release Lash, I don't understand why it's on Spirit Thrust. It seems unnecessary. I would rather see the motion value return to 26. Spirit Thrust plus Spirit Helmbreaker plus Spirit Release Lash is the highest DPS combo. However, its negative elemental modifier suggests it will perform best with raw longswords, which is a little bit disappointing. I hope elemental longswords are viable in wilds for most matchups. I don't want to be stuck with one longsword throughout the entire game. Elemental longswords will probably be better with Crimson Slashes, but I'll cover that topic in a separate video. One last point about the gameplay loop. In Iceborne it was a back and forth between red and yellow gauge, using Helmbreaker to drop the gauge and Force Slash plus Round Slash to raise it. In Wilds I think it will be similar, but we will go from red to white using Helmbreaker plus Spirit Release Lash. Then we will use the Iceborne Slash, Force Slash plus Round Slash or Focus Strike to reach red gauge again. Unfortunately, there is only one way to spend the gauge level, by using the Helmbreaker. It would be better if Spirit Release Lash was an independent attack, not just a Helmbreaker follow-up. This forces us to use Helmbreaker first, resulting in the loop I just described. I'm a bit worried that the new Crimson Slash combo will not be used much if Elemental Longswords aren't properly supported like in Iceborne. It would be a shame if they can't balance the Helmbreaker plus Spirit Release Lash combo with any other longsword options. All these considerations are based on the November beta which was running on an old build. Already in the recent builds shown at Osaka we can spot some changes. The Iceborne Slash now only hits once and not twice. The Focus Strike has a new flashy animation, and as mentioned before, the Helmbreaker gives you back a little of spirit. More changes are likely before release, so we can only hope for the best. And that's it for the video. If you enjoyed it and learned something new, please consider subscribing. This is gonna be the last video for this year, so thank you everyone for supporting the channel throughout the year. And now, let me wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Bye bye!